the Happy Scientist podcast. Each episode is designed to make you more focused, more productive, and more satisfied in the lab. You can find us online at bitesizebio.com/happyscientist. Your hosts are Kenneth Vogt, founder of the executive coaching firm Vera Claritas, and Dr. Nick Oswald, PhD, bioscientist, and founder of Bitesize Bio.
Hello and welcome to the Happy Scientist podcast from Bitesize Bio. If you want to become a happier, healthier and more productive scientist, you are in the right place. I'm Nick Oswald, the founder of bitesizebio.com, and with me is the driving force of this podcast, Kenneth Vogt, my friend, mentor and founder of the coaching company Vera Claritas. In recent podcasts we've been talking about giving and receiving help, and we're going to extend that theme today with a discussion on whether you can give too much. So let's bring in the man himself. Ken, how are you doing today?
Doing good, Nick. How are you?
Good.
It was interesting. I originally thought of this as kind of a two-part thing, but Nick and I were talking about this after the second part, and he said, there's a third part. And I went, there is? And he said, yeah. What about when people give too much of themselves? And I thought, oh, yes, that's true. We really need to cover that. Because, initially we talked about how you got to go your own way. You gotta pick your own path. You gotta not be led by other people. And then we talked about, okay, now that you picked your own way, you're gonna need help. You're gonna need support. You're gonna want people to gather around you and give to you. But of course, part of the process of getting people to give to you is you give to them. But for many people, they get trapped in this thing about giving away everything, and it becomes a pattern where they just totally give themselves away all the time, and they never get as much back as they give, or maybe don't get anything back at all. And you might wonder, how do I get out of that state? How do I break that chain? Because your nature may be that I want to help other people, or your nature may be more insidious. It may be I give away so that people will love me. And that's a counterproductive way of approaching your career, let alone your life. Now, there's an interesting thing I was pondering here the last couple of days, Nick, that is unique to science, in that you do this thing called peer review. Mm-hmm. And I think from an outside perspective of a non-scientist, we hear that, and we probably don't hear it correctly. We probably don't hear it the way you mean it. That is, peer review is that your work is being reviewed, or even probably more accurately, the conclusions of your work are being reviewed by fellow experts. But the way many of us would hear it is peer review is my peers reviewing me. And I suspect that many scientists are acting that way themselves. They are looking for peer review. In other words, they're looking for approval from their peers. A personal approval. Not approval for their ideas, not approval for their conclusions or for their logic, but personal approval. And that is the source for many folks of giving too much away. So I wonder if you could weigh in on that a little, Nick.
That's an interesting one. I have never thought of that angle being specific to scientists. I would say that I think one of the things about this idea of giving away too much is that I think that most people don't even realize that they're doing it, or that it's a problem. And I guess that could be the same here, is that if you think that's how, if you're subconsciously or whatever, you're copying someone else who is, giving without condition within their profession, that I think that could be, being aware of it is the first step. I know, because I think I had that tendency, and you pointed out to me, and it was a big surprise to me.
Well, yeah, and I think it's because a lot of folks who get into the scientific field, especially bioscience, they have an altruistic nature to them. They do want to help mankind, or or even animals or plants that the life, they want to help life, and so it makes sense that somebody who is already approaching the world and life from that perspective would sometimes have a tendency to give too much. So the notion here is to understand when to give and when to hold back. And you used the term earlier. You spoke of being conditional, and we've talked about giving in terms of transactions before, which is fine. There's nothing wrong with I give you something and in return you give me something, as long as we're both happy with what we get out of that transaction. That's fine. There are other times when altruistic giving is the right thing to do, where you're giving with no idea of a return coming back to you. You're just doing it. You're giving to the world. You're putting in the work to do something that will benefit mankind, or a smaller group, your company, your lab, the people you work with, your community, whatever it is that it is. Altruism is just fine, but you have to understand when it is you are being altruistic and when it is you should be involved in a transaction, and when it is you should just say, no, I don't even want to be involved in a transaction. I'm not going to give anymore. I don't have any more to give. So that's part of the issue there. Sometimes you may look at something, boy, it would really be good if I would give in this situation. It would be good for the world, or it would be good for others, or it would be a great transaction, but you don't have it to give. If somebody offers to sell you a brand new Bentley for $10,000, yes, that's a great thing. You should give $10,000 for that, as long as you have $10,000. If you don't have it, then you shouldn't give it. You shouldn't break yourself. You shouldn't spend the mortgage payments on that just because it's a good deal.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I have a kind of it's not an alternative. It's another way to look at that, is that maybe as well as differentiating between conditional and unconditional, and what's the difference, and when it should be a transaction, making sure you get what you deserve. It's more globally than that, is just including yourself in the giving, so that
Sure.
you make sure that if you're looking after, the same extent that you look after other people, you look after yourself.
Right. So let me introduce a paradigm for that to wrap something around that, because I've noticed that people often get this wrong. They can't get the differentiation straight, because we see a dichotomy of either I serve myself or I serve others. And my notion may be, if I'm serving others, I can't be serving myself. And if I serve myself, I cannot be serving others. And so the problem then is that when you try to give to other people, you may see it that, well, I must do it in such a way that I exclude myself from any gain. And vice versa. If you start to get any gain out of it, you think, I'm no longer serving others. And so you bust into this black and white world. And there are people out there in your world, in your life, in your lab, in your company, that live in service to self. And they can be very difficult people to deal with, because they're very selfish. They're all about what's in it for me. They can be narcissistic. I don't want to get into pathology about this, but the point being is that outlook in life, usually for those who prefer the idea of serving others, they look at those folks and they go, I don't want anything to do with that. I don't want to be like that. I don't like to be around those people, and I don't like to work with those people, and I definitely don't like to be under the thumb of those people. And so they hurl themselves into further service to others. See, I'm not like that. I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be like that. But then they start cutting themselves off, as you noted. So rather than thinking of that service to others is better than service to self, an even better notion than service to others is service to all. It's not other. I'm part of everything. I and you are just as important as the next person. And if you are operating in such a way where you're always doing good for other people, instead of seeing them as others, see them as just people. And then recognize you also are people. So when I do something of benefit for Nick, if it's also a benefit for me, that made it that much better. It doesn't have to be exclusively for Nick and to my detriment, and it doesn't have to be exclusively to me to Nick's detriment. So if you can start thinking of including yourself in the group that you're serving. So you may look at it and say, I'm serving a certain community, or I'm working on something that will help people with this problem, or I'm working on this that will just be good for mankind, or for animal life, or general life on the planet, and recognize you're a piece of that, you're a part of it. You're one step in a better direction toward not giving away everything and not giving away too much so that you get hurt yourself. Does that resonate with you, Nick?
Yeah, definitely. I think that one other angle on that strikes me is that sometimes when you think that you're doing good for other people by putting yourself out, then it's not actually the best for yourself. Well, it's definitely not the best for you, but it's not the best for them either, because they can become reliant on you, and you're not giving them the chance to grow, and so on. So it's got to be balanced, and it's a good to do. It was definitely a good step for me, and still is actually to evaluate where that balance is for you. Are you too far in one direction? And if you're too far in the selfish direction, then that obviously has to change as well. But if you're too far in the selfless direction, then that's equally as damaging for not just yourself, but for the other people around you potentially. Sure.
You think of those two words too, selfish and selfless. We hear selfish and we hear that as a negative. And selfless, that makes them a really good person. It's not a good idea to be selfless. You should be a part of everything that's going on in your world. So I'm not arguing toward being selfish to the exclusion of others, but to be selfless to the exclusion of yourself is just as bad. It's the exclusion that's the problem, not which direction your attentions are going. So drop the exclusion part, and that's where the solution will come from. I had an interesting experience the other day. I mentioned in a past episode I had a stroke a few months ago, and so I haven't been driving lately, so I've been using Uber. So I had an Uber driver the other day, and we got to talking, and he had a stroke very similar to mine 4 years ago. Well, this is good news for me, because here's this guy, he's driving his car, he's talking just fine, he doesn't have any speech problems. I saw him using his impaired hand, and it didn't look impaired. He at one point got out of the car and walked around to my side. I was in the back seat on the passenger side. When I got out, he walked around to my side of the car. But something he said when he came over, he got there, then he stopped. And I got out of the car, and he says, "You'll notice I didn't help you." And I said, "Yeah." He says, "Yes, the reason I didn't help you is because it wouldn't help you." I thought, whoa, this guy gets it. He wants to give. He wanted to help me. In fact, we're going to have dinner next week, so I can talk to him more about his stroke recovery.
Nice.
Yeah, but he's certainly willing to give, but he understands he needs to be in the process. He could have thought, I'm going to feel good about myself. I'm gonna help this guy. Because I've recovered. I want to show I'm recovered and I'm in better shape than he is. And there's all kinds of motivations that could be there for giving to others that aren't actually so good. You might be trying to look good rather than to be good, and so that brings us to the next thing I was thinking about. How do we uncover your motives for giving? Why are you giving? Well, there's some questions you could ask yourself. about why you're giving to others. And some of these questions, you're going to hear them and you go, oh man, that is me. And some of them you're going to hear and go, oh, I don't do that. That's not what I'm about. But consider some of these things. Do you secretly believe that you deserve less than others, and therefore you have to give away things to other people because they deserve them, but you don't? Are you compensating for secretly believing you deserve more than others? Are you trying to hide the fact that you think you're better than other people, and so you're going to give it away to try and show you, see, no, I'm not like that. I'm not doing that at all. Do you believe that giving earns you virtue points that make you superior to others, or that giving absolves you from previous selfishness or existing character flaws? Are you using your giving in such a way as to fix something that's external to what you're giving? So when you start thinking about, what is my motivation for this? Why am I doing this? And in some cases you're going to go, well, I'm just doing it because, it needs to be done. That's what we tell ourselves. Is that really true? I mean, really, really question yourself as to whether or not something is really true. And sometimes we'll just ask ourselves, am I doing this because I think I'm less deserving? And our answer is no. And if you could just ask yourself a second question, really? Is that really true? It's amazing how often your answer will change. It's just this little self-examination process you can go through. You ask yourself, is this so? And is that really true? And it will uncover for you why things are happening. And you may be shocked when you do this little examination. The next time you give something, especially if you give something in such a way that it hurt you a bit, or that it was costly to you, or you felt like, man, I didn't have time for that, or I didn't have the resources, but I did it anyway, and why did I do that? And it's a good time to ask yourself that. Why am I doing this? What's actually driving this? Am I trying to look good? Am I trying to not feel bad anymore? What is happening here that is causing me to give in a situation where it's just not the right thing to do in that moment? Or where it's costing me, where I'm not also benefiting from this giving. And understand, you can give in such a way that where your benefit is indirect. It's when you help your 3-year-old get dressed, it doesn't benefit you at all. Well, they're not going to make you late for work, but they get dressed, and great, now they're dressed, and that's good. I'm feeling good about being a good parent, and that's fine. But be aware of why I'm doing that. Yes, I did it because I love my 3-year-old, but I also did it because I want to feel good about myself, and that's fine. But be aware of it, and then you'll be making choices. Because then there'll be other times when your 6-year-old is bothering you to tie your shoes, you're like, man, I have taught you how to tie your shoes. Tie your own shoe. You can do it. I remember when I was a little kid, and I was probably about 5 at the time, and I remember walking up to my mother, who was getting ready for work, and it was before school, and I stuck out my shoe to her to tie my shoe, and she said, "Would you like to learn how to tie your shoe?" And I was like, "Yeah." This being subservient to someone else, being at somebody else's, under somebody else's total control all the time. Yeah, I want to know how to do this. And that was it. She showed me once, and I have tied my shoes ever since. Well, except for lately. But, sometimes when we're giving because people are asking us. And maybe they were asking because we've never bothered to check in with them to see if we could help them to learn to do it themselves. Or if we can give them a step up. And I think a lot of you, especially if you've got undergrads working for you, or others in your lab, part of the mentoring process is to help them to learn to do for themselves. And so giving to them actually isn't much of a gift at that point. It'd be far better of a gift to give them the tools that they need so that they can stand on their own 2 feet.
It's a really important introspection on one hand, but also it's a good experience builder. How would you say that? Experience or wisdom builder, if you like, because often the first thing you think of that would be the right thing to do is to help someone is not. It's not actually the best thing. Your driver there had experience that meant that he knew that you needed something other than what people might think, which is you didn't need to be helped, but you needed to be left to get on with it.
Sure.
So there's that
And
as
I've
well.
had plenty of drivers like that. They want to help, and I'm like, first off, you don't know how to help, and I don't know what to tell you to help. So just let me get out of the car, you know.
Yeah, it's a real balance. It's a real balance there of between motivation and knowledge, and understanding what your motivation is kind of half the battle, I would say, and looking to see if there's a better way you could do it. Tending towards allowing people to, enabling people rather than just doing for them is probably the balance. I don't know. That just strikes me.
Definitely. And, I mean, there are times when somebody just genuinely does need your help. And it may not be because of incapacity or inability on their part. It may just be circumstances of the moment that they just need some support. And if you have the capacity to help, well, absolutely do it. We're certainly not advocating not giving here, but we are advocating not giving yourself away. If you get to where it's just costing you, then too much, more than you can pay. Well, that's not good. That's not sustainable. The other thing is to recognize here that this isn't a zero-sum game. We're not in a contest with other people to see who can give more. You don't win at the end of the day because you gave more than them in a contest. That's not who wins. So we can all win in this, in that we're working together efficiently and capably, and we're strengthening each other and building on each other. And everyone who has worked on an effective team, who's had that experience, realizes, man, that's what I want to have every time. If you haven't had that experience, I'm sorry for you. But I would suggest to you, if you're not having that experience, it may well be that you're not receiving. You're not allowing other people to give to you. So, it's something to give consideration to. So here we are. All right, I realize I shouldn't just give myself away, and I've done a little questioning of myself, and I've seen what my motives are, and I'm not real thrilled with what I've learned about myself. But now what? What do I do? How do I find the line? How do I know when this is a good time to give, and this other is not a good time to give? Well, there are some signals. You can think about it this way. Healthy giving feels good. That is, you're not going to feel bad after giving in a setting that was healthy. If you feel bad after giving, really examine that. Why did I get into that situation where I felt bad? And maybe you felt taken advantage of. Maybe you felt like, I picked some bad priorities here and I let some important things go to do this when I shouldn't have. If you're chastising yourself afterward, okay, something that was telling you right there that you didn't choose properly when it came time to give. And sometimes that just kind of like happens on automatic. Somebody asks you and you just automatically say yes. Well, that's a dangerous thing, because there are times when you just should say no. And there are times when sometimes we don't say no because we're worried that, oh man, they're going to think bad things about me, or it's really going to impact them to the negative. And you know what? Give people a chance to solve their own problems. You're not the superhero to solve everybody's problems for them. Let them be engaged in their own world and deal with what they have to deal with. And oftentimes, somebody asks you for something and you say, man, I just can't give right now. They're like, oh, that's no problem. It's okay. They're not thinking bad of you after that. They saw a potential solution to their problem. They asked, oh, that wasn't the solution. Okay, fine. They move on to the next thing. Now, next thing about healthy giving feels sustainable. So when you give in a setting and you feel like, man, I could just keep doing this. I could do that every time it's asked of me. Well, then that's some healthy giving. But if you're feeling like, if I keep this up, I'm going to burn out. If I have to do that one more time, it's going to break me, or it's going to drain my reserves. Then you're going down the wrong road. Now, another thing about giving is when you don't give, stinginess feels bad. If you held back from giving just out of I just don't want to. I want to hold this for myself. I want to keep my time. I want to keep my resources, whatever. That doesn't feel good. Well, again, this is telling you, okay, I didn't make a good choice there. You want to make a choice that's sustainable for you and for everyone else. But you got to take care of yourself first. And that's not say take care of yourself exclusively, but you are a finite resource. You can be drained by other people, and there'll be nothing left. And then you won't be able to give anymore. So if you really care about giving, and I suspect most of you, that is your main motivation, you really do want to give, well, give in such a way that you can keep giving. Because if you give it all away, then that's it. It's over. And you can then you're of no good to yourself, and you're no good to anyone else.
There's that great analogy, of course, Ken, about the oxygen masks in the plane. Of the oxygen masks come down in the plane because the cabin's depressurized. You spend all your time helping the other person get theirs on, and then you collapse.
Exactly.
So you put yourself on
first. You will be
first
strengthened to help many others if you have your mask on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, okay, I realize I've had a problem with this. I realize now how I can tell when I'm having a problem in the moment. I realize how I need to make a shift. So how am I going to make that shift? Well, here's some things to think about. Martyrdom is a trap. If you're doing this, where you're giving yourself away so you can feel expended, like, well, that's it. I did everything I could. I couldn't have done one more thing. You can tell by the fact that I'm dying here, Well, that is not the solution. That's a lack of wisdom. It's great to be compassionate. I mean, compassion is a powerful force, but compassion without wisdom is destructive. It's mostly destructive to you. That doesn't work. You gotta temper your compassion with wisdom.
And one of the other ways that can work, though, Ken, is that that goes back to looking at the motivation there. Are you doing that so that you can gain points to expect back from someone else?
Yeah, exactly. Or you have a messiah complex. I'm here to save everyone. If it wasn't for me, no one would survive.
Yeah, or the more I do, the more they owe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Yeah, we talked about that a little earlier, and really looking at your honest motives. See, this is not something you have to discuss with anybody else. You don't have to talk to people you work with or your boss. You don't have to talk to your spouse about it, even if you don't want to. Or your best friends. There's something to know for yourself. What is really motivating me here? What is really making me tick? And it's good to know. I'm not telling you to change it either, but be aware of what it is. Now, there's another adage that's good to remember. There is more joy in giving than in receiving. And they're like, yeah, that's it. That's why I like to give all the time. Well, that's wonderful. But you know what? Stop being so selfish about it. Give other people a chance to have some joy every once in a while. Let them do some giving so that you can be on the receiving end too. You don't have to just give. Let other people enjoy giving too.
Yeah, that's a great way to look at it.
Don't be afraid to accept what others give either. Sometimes we look at it like, well, I'd like to receive, but what will they think about me? Or they're going to think I'm weak, or it's going to undercut my political position. It's like, it's just not true.
Or it's embarrassing to receive the compliment, or whatever.
Right.
You just have to. Some people. Well, I know that's.
Yes, Nick. Do you know how to receive a compliment?
I do now.
It's really simple. When somebody compliments you, you say thank you.
Thank you.
That's it. You don't have to give oh well, I'm not that great. It wasn't that hard. No, just thank you. That's it. They have their position on it. They have their perception of what it was. They have told you, and now the good thing for you is just let them give that.
And receive, and when you receive it, then you get the benefit. So why not?
Exactly.
Why not?
Now, sometimes people are offering things to you, and so we're telling you in those situations, be sure to be receptive. Sometimes they're not offering. Sometimes they just don't know to offer. So don't be afraid to ask for help. So we think, oh man, that's the worst. I'm going to look weak. I'm going to look deficient. It's like, no, you're going to look human. You're going to look like a team player. You're going to look like somebody that trusts them. People like that. People want to have the joy of giving. Give them a shot. Give them a chance. Now, the other thing that can happen too is that, okay, maybe you're not just you're asking for help and asking them to be altruistic. Maybe, you have given to them and it's time to call in those favors. Do so. I mean, don't do it in a I've got you by the short hairs kind of way, but it's like, I did this and that for you, but man, it's time. I need to call that chip in. I need some help here. So what you're doing there too is you're letting them know that, hey, I can't, you owed me, but I'm about to let you off the hook for owing me. This is what I need, and then you'll be free again. So again, you can do it in such a way that isn't like, I got you and you have to do this for me. That's not what you're signaling toward. You're saying, I helped you and now I really need your help and I'll really appreciate that. And so now giving becomes this not just a two-way thing, but it becomes a moving thing. It's a flow. The giving comes in, the giving goes out, and it will never stop. And you'll stop doing this thing where it's all going in one direction. You'll stop doing this thing where you're giving to the point of doing damage. And we've all heard that saying, give till it hurts. What a stupid thing to say. It shouldn't hurt. I mean, I'm not saying that it shouldn't come at an effort. That it's like going to the gym. You go and you work out until you feel like you put in a hard workout. But you don't do it until you've hurt yourself. The objective isn't to injure yourself. Yes, fully engage, but don't give it all away. Don't do it to the point where there's nothing left.
And I suppose the kind of the biology specific way to look at that is that all of biology is about cycles. And so why would this be any different? For it to be sustainable, it has to be a cycle. It has to go one way and then the other. And if you just keep it going in one direction, then that's an unsustainable reaction or whatever.
Exactly. I heard an interesting podcast the other day of a woman she was actually working for the forestry department in Canada. And this is, back a few decades ago, where they had been clear cutting trees and then they were planting trees, and her job was just to see how the new saplings were doing, and they weren't doing well. And she was doing research and trying to figure it out because and what she started to notice was that there was fungus in the soil. That on healthy trees she'd find that fungus on their roots, and on unhealthy trees it wasn't there. And it was often even on different species trees nearby, and trees that they would consider to be weeds that were in the way of the trees they wanted to grow for lumber. But she was young, and she felt like she couldn't talk about it. And in fact, at the time, she didn't feel like she had enough of a degree to talk about it. She ended up going back and getting a more advanced degree before she finally started talking about it and published about this. And she was one of the first people who realized that trees were communicating with each other via this fungal network. and they were sharing nutrients between one another, and that it was all part of a system, that it was like a neural network that shared information and resources. But that sharing was absolutely required. When these trees tried to stand alone, they didn't do well. If they gave everything away, they didn't do well. They had to be part of a system, and we're surrounded by networks in life. And I don't just mean human networks. I'm talking about in biological networks. And it should make sense to us, especially those of you who are so well educated in this, that I'm part of a network too. I am also a biological creature and involved in biological activity, and even beyond that, it's psychological activity. It's part of it's come out of biology. So don't cut yourself off, and don't give yourself all away. You don't have to be a sacrificial lamb.
And I suppose that takes us neatly back to the original idea about the original idea of this kind of series of 3 podcasts, or mini series of 3 podcasts, about kind of being in a network, how to not be pulled along by the network, but also how to use it and how to give back to it, and how to, that you are like that. That's a great analogy. The trees, communicating in that way. It's exactly the same. We're biological, so that kind of, I think that's kind of a neat way to bring this one to a close. And the bonus piece of advice there as well about I'm not experienced enough, so this observation won't be right, so I'm not going to say anything. Oh man, that's definitely something we should cover at some point. Don't do that.
Oh boy, yeah. That was something that really struck me about this, because now she's seen as a world expert on this, but at the time she felt so insignificant that she couldn't speak up, and she may well have introduced an idea 10 years earlier that would have done a lot of good.
Yep.
But
yep.
She was scared, and she held back.
Yeah, it's a common problem, and I think it's probably something worth discussing in another episode. But I think that rounds off a great series there, Ken. And again, it might be worth people going back and listening to the previous 2 episodes. Listening to this again now that you've gone through it once. It's really about the bigger picture, about what it means to be part of a network. Whether that's in a family or a profession or a lab or whatever, and how to both bring out your own, be yourself within that network, but also how to give and take within that network in a healthy way. Yeah, I think this is a great topic, actually, Ken. And that brings me to the housekeeping parts of it. So there'll be a summary. I don't think we mentioned any specific resources this time, but there'll be a summary of the podcast, the main points of the podcast in the show notes, which you can find at bitesizebio.com, The Happy Scientist. And this is episode 30. And of course you can find the show notes for all other episodes as well in the same place. And also, if you want to get more of what we are, more of this great advice that Ken is freely giving out here, you can look at facebook.com / The Happy Scientist Club, which is all one word, and we'll be in there giving some further insights and different ways to look at this as well. And it would be great to see you in there. And finally, remember that episodes 1 to 9 of this podcast, if you haven't done this already, it's worth going back and looking to those, because those are where we talk about the fundamental principles, some fundamental principles that will really help you to calibrate and reset your outlooks on things and understand yourself a bit better. Really, those things really help me. And so episodes 1 to 9 of this podcast are where you'll find those. So again, Ken, thanks for another really insightful topic. And very well delivered.
And thanks for suggesting it, Nick.
Oh, well, then again, yeah, I should say that. Yeah, I should accept that the last one was me, but the first 2 were you. So again, thanks, Ken, and we will
Thank you.
catch you all next time.
Bye now.
Bye.
The Happy Scientist is brought to you by Bitesize Bio, your mentor in the lab. Bitesize Bio features thousands of articles and webinars contributed by hundreds of PhD scientists and scientific companies who freely offer their hard-won wisdom and solutions to the Bitesize Bio community.